podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
We have just had round 4 of the URC and the talking points are almost never ending. We'll be going through every single game that we've just watched this weekend, from the biggest shocks to the most surprising walkovers. Let's start the show.
You're listening to United Rugby Rewind.
I am joined by a slightly different lineup this week. I have got, as normal, Mohammed. Welcome.
Evening.
We have no Scottish representation on the pod this week, sadly. If you do feel like you would like to get into rugby podcasting and you are from the great nation of Scotland, get in touch. You can either email us or let us know in the comments down below. Producer Lee will sort you out. But perhaps most interestingly, we have a returning face to the URC Rewind. And some may be suspicious of the timing of this, but we promise that it is just because poor Ulster Adam is feeling quite poorly this week, and so he nobly stepped up. That Caolan, welcome back, sir. How are you?
I'm very good, Hugh. It's very convenient timing, but I'd like the records to show that myself and Adam live in different countries, so I did not inject him with whatever illness he has at the moment. Although the fact that I have said that may make it seem like I actually have done it.
The conspiracy theorists will be out in force this week, absolutely out in force. But let's just get straight to it. There's nowhere else that we can begin but the big game of the weekend. One of the games of club rugby union as a sport has to be Leinster versus Munster. And Caolan, it was somewhat of a notable result. Do you have any thoughts on the matter?
I have a lot of thoughts on the matter. Thank you very much. No, look, it lived up to the billing, didn't it? From minute one, like first moment of this game, Munster kick off from left to right. I did the whole Croke Park, what is Croke Park explanation last year, so people can get into that then. But Munster kick off for the Hill 16 end, high hanging ball. It's caught by, I think it was Alex Soroka, and Taki Abrahams nails him in a tackle, and straight away you're in your head being like, okay, Munster are up for this. Then it's the usual, Leinster go down the field, you give them those penalty ladders where they go corner, corner, corner. They score a try, you think, okay, fair enough, it's going to be one of those. Leinster then went 73 minutes without scoring. And for all that we said about Northampton beating them, Scarlets beating them last year, the Bulls, and I know the Stormers went 80 minutes, and credit to the Stormers, the fact that happened was a huge surprise. They almost had nothing for Munster, and you very rarely see that for a team littered with Lions, a World Cup winner in there. Like, I know Jack Nienaber wasn't at the ground. He was back home in South Africa for personal reasons. But this is not characteristic of Leinster. It's not even characteristic of Munster, but it's exactly what Clayton McMillan wants. And to add a bit of context, I was working at it, so I was in at the press conferences afterwards. The difference between the two, Clayton McMillan, he commands a room, he's a big guy, he's a big presence, and he was saying the theme of the week was to be the hunter, not the hunted, because Munster so often have come up
that's
here.
why every article that I've seen has got the word hunter in it.
Yeah, that's exactly why. So he said that was the team of the week. And then Josh van der Fleer comes in about 20 minutes later, because it's Leo Cullen first, then van der Fleer. And within about 2 minutes of speaking, he's like, I've got to ask myself what I could have done better as Leinster captain, as one of the returning guys. And I think that's the first time we've seen the kind of the shields come down a little bit from Leinster. So often it has been, these lads would stay out of the limelight. They didn't really talk about their big losses, and it would just be, we'll go back to whatever. To hear that was almost like they have fully recognized that these uppercuts, that they went years without anyone really landing, are becoming more popular. Scarlets and Northampton back to back last year. Stormers, Bulls less so because it was a more competitive game, but Stormers and Munster this year, they're becoming frequent. And I think Leinster now are a team that can be got at. How do you get at them? Patience. Munster 34% possession, 37% territory. They had treble the amount of points per entry than Leinster did, or something close to it. Patience is key. Discipline is key. Munster had all that in abundance. They had a huge crowd there, and they got the job done. And all of a sudden, Munster are 4-0 to start the season. And it's a very different vibe to say last year when I was on here.
And 4-1. They beat the Sharks.
Sure. Um, and it's a very different vibe to last year, you know?
Well, you talk about the patience there, and for me, when I was watching that massive defensive set in the second half, I don't know how many phases it was, but I was watching, I was like, geez, Munster are making every single ruck a battle. They
Yeah.
are getting in there for every single one and disrupting the ball. And you got to tread the line with the referee in those kind of scenarios. I didn't see anything that I didn't see any clear penalties. I think the referee got it right, but it's a brave strategy. But I think it goes to show that kind of multi-phase rugby, that kind of keeping the ball in the 22 for 15, 20 phases is not in vogue in rugby anymore. I think rugby's moved on from that. We don't see teams, if you look at the rugby championship that we've just had, I can't recall any team doing that successfully. And part of the reason is because the ruck is such a battle that it's disadvantageous to have it that long. And so it shows. So I think there's a question's got to be had because the Leinster players that they had on the park, forget the coaching for a second. They should know. They should have been able to figure out that things weren't working for them in that moment. And look,
But
we've got to
if you flip it across there, just sorry to interject you, like Connacht their last minute goal line stand against the Bulls, they went about 10 phases. They had two or three times where it looks like they're going to be turned over. And the talk now is should Connacht have taken their penalty advantage? But at the time, you didn't feel like they were going to score unless they went out wide. Leinster didn't. They backed themselves to keep it tight, to muscle over Munster. But all that did was play into the hands of Gavin Coombs, Sean Clane, and arguably one of the best defensive players in world rugby of his generation, Tyke Byrne, who had something like 6 turnovers in this game. Like, it's rare that you talk about playing into someone's hands when they're a second row. But when it's Tyke Byrne, it's a little bit different because he is that level. This man has shoulder surgery after the Lions tour, his last game that he played, and he was phenomenal. And I know I should say it, and I always said it on this podcast, a man made by the Scarlets. And
true
that
fact.
now means I can waive my appearance fee because I've said that.
Yeah. So like you say, most of the stats are in Leinster's favour. Uh, Territory is the massive one, 69-31. That's incredible. But in the URC, we do see that kind of statistical difference and teams winning it. It does happen. Are we I still don't understand how they managed to get this -7 turnovers lost
Yeah,
by
I assume that's an error. Or maybe it should be turnovers total and they got that wrong. Kicks is massive there. Munster had near
15 turnovers won. That's
double.
crazy.
Yeah. Double the kicks, double the meters. Like it was, and Jack Crowley deserves his credit. He got player of the match, but he led Munster around the park so well.
Well,
Do
we
you
got to
know?
talk about it because obviously, it's almost getting to the point now where I'm like, I want Sam Prendergast to play well just to have a week off from the discourse. But when you have a situation like this where Jack Crowley's put in such a masterful performance, clear man of the match, in my opinion, it's like, well, you can't not talk about it now. It is the talking point, even that on his own. It wasn't just, I think his kicking out of hands was the best part of his game, but there was even that moment on his own 5 meter line where he steps 2 men to get the exit away. It was just a really, phenomenal bit of skill that you don't normally associate with any Munster player, to be fair. And, I guess Mohammed will bring you in here. You, it's a done to death argument, but in days like this, you can't not do it again.
You broke up there for a moment. Say again.
It's a done to death argument between Prendergast and Crowley, but when you have days like this, you can't not do it again.
Yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying this. I think it's very healthy to have two good fly-off options, and I always liked Jack Crowley, but I understood why they pushed Pendergrass because maybe they felt like they were pushing the evolution of Irish rugby, but it seems a bit too soon. He's still got glaring issues in his game, and I'm sure the Leinster supporters are going to get to us in the comments for that. But yeah, player with a lot of potential, but maybe needs a bit more seasoning in terms of his play and stuff. So yeah, I like Crowley. He seems like a complete fly-off type thing. He's got all the ability. He can tackle really well. he marshals his channel quite well. It's not like they're going to continually play people down that flank unless it's like a massive blindside flanker. So, yeah, good options to have if you're Ireland, and if you're Munster and the new Munster management, good options to have as a starter, especially since he didn't actually play last week and he didn't look off pace at all.
Yeah, I think the one kind of worry bead, Caolan, from a Munster point of view, the stat that kind of just popped up there was 7 scrum offences given away. And obviously, we've seen from the Ireland squad, 9 front rowers in the squad, 8 of them from Leinster. That's got to still be the kind of point of that you're worried about, basically, as a Munster fan.
Yeah, I mean, most of them were down the tight head side, which you kind of could have expected with no Salnor, no Jaeger in there. Obviously, John Ryan is pushing on, and John Ryan deserves a lot of credit. He was on the field for 75 odd minutes, came back on the back row for Tadhg Beirne in the second half as a HIA replacement. But most of them were down that side. He struggled with McCarthy. He then struggled with Andrew Porter. Milne against Furlong was more of a battle that I think Furlong just like I don't want to say Furlong got away with it just on name recognition, but it was a lot closer than that side of the scrum would have you believe, if you know what I mean. Like it is like Furlong is old enough to just find his way through that picture in that split second. But Munster's tight head side is a weakness. I do think if Munster are going to make signings mid-season, which is something the provinces have started to do a lot more of, I think it'll be tight head prop and it'll be backup scrum half. But even saying that, Craig Casey didn't play this game. Probably the player in Munster that is the heartbeat of the team more than anyone else. And Ethan Caolan, gets that intercept try, played really, really well. Like there's kind of a running gag.
He'd had a funny minute. He had a funny moment just before that, didn't he? I can't remember what it was, but he had a mistake or something, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the number 2 guy being the number 2 guy, and then he gets the intercept.
He still did have 1 or 2 mistakes, but then, he had that intercept and he just grew from there, I think. Like he had a hit on Sam Prendergast, and I don't think they were 20s the same year. I think he was the year before. But someone said it to me. It was like the Henson on Matthew Tate from all those years ago. I think that's 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Where he just hits him like square into the stomach and just drives him back. And if it wasn't for Porter latched onto Prendergast, he probably would have went back even further. It was one of those really cool ones. But credit to him, he played really well. But it's actually a weird one because when Munster last won in Dublin in 2014, in the regular season, Ian Keatley had a intercept try. And when Munster famously won in Lansdowne Road in 2006 in a very similar jersey, as he probably mentioned back on the Jersey show, it was bookended by a Trevor Halstead intercept try. I don't know if Mohammed remembers Trevor Halstead,
Oh,
but
I
it
remember him. It's
it,
before my
it
time, really, but I used him a lot in the rugby PlayStation game. Yeah.
that's not fair. He was a great player, but it's a weird one how intercepts they're not in vogue either, but they just seem to pop up in this fixture. That and drop goals just seem to pop up in this fixture. I think it's the only thing we lacked on Saturday night in Croke Park.
If Jack Crowley had pulled one of those out, then it would have been the complete performance naturally. But we must move on. As much as we would like to talk about that game all night, we must talk about the next one. And the next one on the agenda is arguably the next biggest game of the weekend, certainly in terms of the stars on show. Sharks versus Ulster. A fantastic away win for Ulster. I think that they played absolutely superbly, scored some brilliant tries. But, because we've got a Sharks fan on the show, we're going to start from the Sharks' point of view. And everyone's asking the same question, Mohammed, that they've been asking for years now. Your team sheet ain't the problem. So what's the problem?
2 words, Wenger out. Oh, wait, no, Plumtree out. I got that one confused. I don't even support Arsenal, but it's time for a change. There's a lot of issues we could go, but I'll try and keep it brief. We've very much been living on the fact that there are systemic issues within the structure of the team, and we were saved by the fact that we just had quality players coming through from the Springboks who would just like come together and play well. But now the issue is that's not happening. The Springboks are actually not turning up to the degree that we need, as well as their ill discipline. Like I was extremely disappointed in Vincent Koch and Makazole Mapimpi. And then the issue there on top of that is that the guys who have behind them, can we trust them to play at that level? So that then emboldens people to be ill-disciplined and still sort of play next week, that type of thing. Although Mampipi got a red, so he's probably going to be suspended, which is which hurts us, including like last season when he got into a fight with the Welsh player. I think we were playing Cardiff, when he didn't need to, and that also got him suspended. So yeah, Plumtree's got to go now. I'm sorry. Not sorry. Yes, we won a Curry Cup and we won a Challenge Cup under him, which is not nothing. Also, I've seen some criticism online. Um, my criticism, Plumtree, is with the execution on the field. I've seen some criticism online saying that the small, almost like tiny sort of YouTube documentaries that the Sharks do, that Plumtree's not shitting the players out, is not like every second word coming out of his mouth isn't the F word. And people saying, oh, that means he's probably a lesser manager to Rassie Erasmus. That's not necessarily the measure of coaching. Um, just because Rassi does that, we're besides the cameras aren't there all the time, so I don't know how people sort of measure coaching in that respect because we're not around Plumtree and the coach and the players all the time. We don't know when he's being a disciplinarian and when he's trying to be a bit more measured. So yeah, phew, we were average. The only aspect we were dominating were the scrums, and we couldn't even use that to turn it into a win. Ulster are very, very good. They came to South Africa. They won. Uh, the idea that Makazole Mapimpi and Vincent can't adjust their tackle technique to tackle a very good Mike Lowry, who's a smaller player like a Tristan Colby, etc., and not spear tackle him like you're a professional rugby player, you got to adjust to the opponent and that type of thing. So yeah, well done to Ulster, and obviously this is why Adam is not here. He supposedly has a cold, but I think he's just got alcohol poisoning from the fantastic result he got and just partied a bit too much.
Well, some of the tries were absolutely stunning from Ulster. And Caolan, I'll bring you in. This is a side of them that we didn't necessarily see last season. What's changed? Has there been any kind of talk from the coaches saying, no, we're going to vary up our approach this season? Is this the players performing to their potential, just maybe getting some boys back fit? What do you put it down to?
I do think fitness is a big part of it. Because they do have like they've had that full strength backline or close to it all season. Doak and Murphy have had, three starts together. Stockdale has started three times. It was Werner Krok's first game, which you wouldn't, or first game back, which you wouldn't notice. And McCluskey and Hume have started three games together and look brilliant. But I think the massive factor, and yes, Mark Sexton is new in there, Willie Falloon is defence coach, but I think for me, the big factor is the pack and the pack build. No Cormac Izuchukwu this week, but Ian Henderson and Harry Sheridan were excellent second row. And you don't need to explain how good Sharno Augustus was at number 8 in the first 40 minutes. He adds such a dynamism. It allows Nick Timoney to just kind of go ruck to ruck, to be that disruptor, to kind of like, if you didn't like Nick Timoney, you say he was stat padding. But if you do like Nick Timoney, you realize he's just very busy and is always doing something more so than probably any other back rower in Ireland not named Josh van der Fleer. I think they're the two that just always seem to be doing something at any given time. Um, so yeah, for me, pack build is a massive difference. And Ulster, like, I'm not a huge Mark Sexton fan in terms of his attacking style and all that, but I do think he's found a gear. This try from Tom Stewart where Doak kicks ahead, it's one of the tries of the year.
It's absolutely sensational. The commentary says so on the highlights for this. The highlights cut in when the Sharks have the ball, and I'm like, wow, this must be a good try if it's starting with the Sharks having the ball.
On the 22.
Yeah, obviously you get the big tackle from a Pimpy, and then the commentator says like Doak's got the ball, but it's a 1-on-4, and then he kicks through, and the hooker of all people is going through under the post to pick it up. It's an iconic try. It's absolutely amazing.
A hooker went 80 minutes down in Durban as well, and I think, like we discussed on the Interpro show, which you can see other side just up there, our little logos.
There's no chance of us doing the pop-out banners. That's beyond
Yeah,
us.
no, it's absolutely fine. I don't really mind. There's a little logo there that'll do. But Nathan Doak is probably the most unlucky player now in Ireland who didn't get into that squad. Now the Tom Farrell got in, which is unbelievable because everyone in the country seems to have been on that bandwagon. Doak looks a different man. He's playing with more urgency. There's less of this kind of slapping around, talking to referees. His goal kicking percentages have been excellent, and he's only missed 2 so far this season, maybe even only 1. And that was the difference as well. Sia Masuku was 0 from 3 to start the game, and Ulster won by 8 points. When you talk about the swings and roundabouts of this game, and yeah, the red card, fair enough. When you get into that last 10 minutes, every point counts. And yes, it's cliched, Doak was almost automatic. Masuku had to find a way to get the ball over the bar in the end. So I think like there's something in that as well. Do you know what I mean?
And that used to be Siamasuku's thing. You see, when he broke into the team, we signed him from the Cheetahs and he didn't play the first half of the season. We weren't sure if he was injured or not. We had Kerwin Bosch and Buta Chamberlain at the time, who were very similar players, good players in their own right. But Masuku brought something that they didn't. One, he hit the line a lot. He ran with the ball and he was secure when he got into contact. And his goal kicking he didn't have the range of, say, Kerwin Bosch, but he couldn't kick from as far a distance, but he was consistent. And the other thing that he could do is that his channel was a bit more strong in terms of them opposition not necessarily getting as much joy as in running his channel. But now he's kicking. This was 3 seasons ago, and now his kicking has suffered. And yeah, he seems like way out of form, which is bad for us because he's not in the Springbok system. So and then Jordan Hendricks, who just got back and looks like he bulked up, he was also injured. So again, as I've mentioned before, our second line of, if you have that many players involved with the Springbok, not just the 9 that were in the team, but more sort of mixed. We've got about 13 players in and out of the Springbok team. If your second row of players either aren't in form and or are injured, that's going to hurt you even more, because we do have good fly-off options in Jean Smith, son of Franco Smith. He looks good but very young, and then Masuku's out of form, and now we'll see what Jordan Hendricks can do. But yeah,
well,
it's a long season so far. Yeah,
like we said, we know that the players aren't the problem at the Sharks.
Yeah.
So I think we covered it in the discussion about the coaches. So before we take a break, let's talk about Zebra versus Stormers. So, by the way, I just want to mention Ulster currently on maximum points in the URC. It's just because they had a game cancelled that they're not top. So one to think about. But yeah, so
That's if they would have beaten Edinburgh over there, but that's a different conversation.
well, that's a different conversation for another day. Luckily, we're a weekly show. Zebra versus Stormers. So Stormers, 4 from 4, 4 tries scored against only in those 4 games, 2 nillings along the way, and another 2 for Sasha. You know, he's not found himself on the thumbnail this week. I just fancied a bit of a change, but it's the Sasha show again for the Stormers. I actually saw some commentary from some Zebra fans or some Italian content creators online saying that actually Zebra didn't play that bad in this game. So, Mohammed, for you, what are the Stormers now getting right this season? Because you've got to say, you know, I've got to eat humble pie because I've slagged them off, and now they're here for 4 from 4 with the best defensive record in the league. They're doing something right.
Something's going on with my internet. Can you guys see me? It says unstable. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, look, Stormers seem to be growing into the season. Their defense didn't look that great early on, but they conceded the least amount of tries. So they're doing what you need to do when you do not play the best. You still have to iron out the results at home or away. So I did think they would win this game, but I thought it would be a bit more closer. Italian teams, including Zebre and Benetton, Treviso, blow hot and cold. So Sasha looked sharp at moments. Other times he maybe did a bit too much, but that's sort of what you get with him. Shout out to Ben Jason Dixon, who made it back into the Springbok announced team. Evan Rose had a solid game again. Stefan Angre at scrum half is showing his maturity, growing as a player. A player people wrote off a lot, and them choosing to this time play Damien Willemse at 12 with Galant coming back in after having a calf injury at 15 sort of helped, although Galant looked sharp and maybe a bit off. It's interesting to see JC Mars make his first appearance of the season on the wing. So yeah, Stormers are doing what they basically need to do, and they started the best of all the South African teams and the best team in the league. If it wasn't for the fact that Ulster had to skip a game because of the storm. Young prop started the game. Vernon Matogo came on and played quite well. Stormers somewhat helped the fact that they haven't really been destroyed by injuries and stuff. And then obviously Johan Ackerman's son, making an impact off the bench after coming to the Stormers, having played quite well for years in the Prem.
Yeah, I think Dobbo's got to be commended for getting the selections right. I think that's really helped. He's brought in some younger guys. 2 questions for you. First, tell us about this young tight head that they've called into the Springbok squad.
Okay, so Zachary Porthen, played quite well for the SA under-20 team. He was the captain back then. They didn't win the World Cup under his captainship. They won it the next season under Riley Norton. He's played well. He struggled a lot in terms of scrumming in the Currie Cup when they blooded Stormers, like the Sharks played very much a youth team in the Currie Cup. And to the Sharks' credit, that then resulted in their under-20 team winning the under-20 SA Cup, which used to be the under-20 Currie Cup, but now it's just called the under-20 Currie Cup, under-20 Cup. So because of a lot of their players got blooded in the Currie Cup, and then they were used to a higher level of rugby. So Bolton weirdly struggled a bit in the Currie Cup in terms of scrumming, and then played really well in the URC, and very much earned his call up to the Springbok team for the Northern Hemisphere tour. So it's a tight head. So we'll have to see how much he actually plays, but I mean that's a massive shoot forward for him. He didn't get as much, say, fanfare as some of the other, like Hashim Peed and Batu Klakane and Cheslin Jooster, because they actually trained with the Springboks beforehand, just as additional players. He wasn't called up for that, but he's going straight into the team to tour Europe, so good for him. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's one thing. The second question was, 2 games in a row, Even Roos has been named player of the match by the fan votes, and in neither game I necessarily thought he was the best player.
That's because Lisa B is from Bit of an Animal is rigging the votes. But yeah, he's very good. He's very popular, shall we say. I mean, I like him. It's interesting the development of South African players, because I'm not sure where he was born, but he went to school in Paarl area, in the sort of Winelands, Platteland sort of area, or Boerland area, which many players do. They go from all over the world. And then he went into the Sharks youth system. And then when the Sharks, 2019, 2020, when the Sharks decided to sort of bring in really, really good Sikambu Zenoshe, and the way that Siya Kolisi actually ended up at the Sharks was that the people sort of backing Siya Kolisi actually wanted to buy the Stormers, but then when they realized they couldn't buy the Stormers Western Province because their books at the time were in disarray, they decided to buy the Sharks.
How does this get back to Even Roos? Sorry, how does this link to Even Roos?
So Even Roos eventually, so Sikambu Zenoshe and Kolisi went to the Sharks, right? And then the Sharks are like, oh, we have a surplus of young players. We were going to bring this kid through the system from the youth team, but he's probably not going to play because we're going to play Sikambu Zenoshe. So then Even Roos was like, cool, I'll go back to the Stormers. And eventually he actually got into the Stormers Super Rugby team before anybody thought he would, and became like a key player in that season when the season had to be suspended because of the pandemic, which people were super surprised by, because they thought he would like come off the bench, play a game here and there, but he actually made the 8th, and he's been like the starting 8 or the first choice 8 for the Stormers since then. So Evan Roos, good player. The debate about sort of his strengths and weaknesses, I wasn't that pleased about him losing his temper a game or two ago, but yeah, still a solid guy.
Well, he's the one, every time he doesn't get named in the Springbok squads, everyone goes, oh, he's not in there again. But I think it's pretty clear that Rassie doesn't rate him. But clearly there's a lot of Stormers fans who were back him to the hills, and hence he keeps getting these Player of the Match awards.
Yeah, but when Rassie's asked at the press conferences, was like every time, he just keeps saying, like, we gave Evan Roos a specific list of things he needs to work on, and everybody's like, there's a lot of 8-man options. Everybody's going to get a chance. It's very similar to Apelele Fase. He was very good for the Sharks, but quite youthful and playing sort of fullback/wing, and then he got his chance for the Springboks at wing, played one good game, then 2 poor games, and he fell out, and everybody's like, clearly Rassie doesn't rate him. But now Apelele Fase is arguably our best choice player at fullback for the national team if you want to play a certain style, and he's definitely the best choice fullback for the Sharks. So
okay, and Even Roos is good also as well, I guess. So okay, so before we move on to the next game, just to remind everybody, if you are enjoying the show, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We are now past 1,000 subscribers. I think this is the first show that we've done since we hit the big 1,000 mark. So thank you to everybody who got us there. That's why you're now seeing adverts during the show, is because we can now monetize through advertising. So many thanks. And now we want to get to 2,000. That's the challenge. So will we get there by next week? There's only one way to find out. Anyway, right. Next show on the agenda. Oh, Cardiff Dragons. Oh, that means I've got to talk. So, Cardiff Dragons, the East Wales Derby, played on a Friday night, which a lot of people complained about and said it wasn't good for fans. But then lots of fans turned up anyway. So it can't have been that bad. So a comfortable win for Cardiff, I think. If you look at the timestamps for their tries, 2 minutes, 14 minutes, 20 minutes, they had the game kind of in the bag by the end of the first half. None of their tries were particularly spectacular. You associate Cardiff with some fancy attacking play. You didn't necessarily see that. To be honest, it wasn't the biggest classic of a game, and I'll come on to a reason for that in a moment. Talupi Faletau is back, which is obviously a positive, not just for Cardiff, but for Wales. He gets on the scoreboard. It's difficult to read too much into this game because Cardiff have beaten Dragons now, if not 19, then 20 times in a row in the URC, have beat them every time since 2016. So that's kind of where you are. The Dragons, I was speaking to Dragons fans during the game, very frustrated watching it, just kind of fed up of losing at this point, which is very understandable. Fed up of losing this game in particular. It just puts them in a bad mood. I'm looking at the stats. Nothing's jumping out to me as being particularly uneven. Clean breaks actually goes in the Dragons' favour. Tinas de Beer, maybe if he just nailed a couple of kicks with the scoreboard, pressure have gone the other way. But I think the thing that you got to say, and producer Lee had a bit of a rant about the referee in the Scarlets game last week, even though we got nilled, and some people might have thought that was just sour grapes. So I'm a neutral in this game. I really don't have a skin in the game as to who wins this. And it was the same referee in this game, and I thought, to be honest, that he killed the game as a spectacle in the first half. When he was giving rolling away penalties, players were hitting the ground, and it was literally 1 second he was giving players to roll away and then giving a penalty. For me, that was way too whistle happy, and it just absolutely took any momentum, any flow out of the game, and it just made it a very tough watch, to be honest. And I think that's a shame, and I think that had a negative impact on everyone's experience. But Cardiff and Caolan, I guess I'll just bring you in for a quick word on Cardiff. For 3 wins, 1 defeat, and that 1 defeat, they got 2 losing bonus points. You got to say they got to be happy with that start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, my takeaway from Cardiff this season is they're probably in pole position to be the best Welsh team. And I know I like to praise the Scarlets when I'm in your company, and I've got a lot of time for Scarlets. I know it's Prison Dragons. But they've managed to go through their opening blocks this season, winning games ugly and pretty, and easily could have won pretty, but ended up losing pretty against Munster as well. That mix is something we haven't seen a lot of. They, in recent years, have been very flash on that kind of hybrid turf, and they play this expansive style, but when push comes to shove, they just get pushed over. I think they're just starting to show that a little bit more in terms of game management and different things. The only reservation I'd have about Cardiff is the longer we are from Matt Sherratt's departure, how much of a toll will it take? How much is his basic imprints? Like, when he's gone, are they going to use November to kind of, right, this is how we want to play? Or are they going to keep building on what he did without him being there, and therefore it gets a little bit hairy and it can hard to keep that continuity naturally? So that's my only thing for them. But to start the season with, what was it, 3 wins and a loss, and I actually don't know who they play next week off the top of my head, but it's a very good start, and it's exactly what we want to see. We want to see them competitive. I want to see 2 Welsh teams and an Italian team and 2 South African teams. And I don't know how many I have left. I don't know if I've room for 4 Irish in the last 8 there, but I do want to see them all in. And Cardiff, to me, would be an absolute advantage. I 100% would back them to get top 8 from here based on how they've started. I just worry that November block may be where we see the leaks start to come in. That's my only concern.
Yeah, and you'd expect them to get a lot of players in that Welsh squad as well. So you're right. I agree with you. I think that will be the testing time. So going to move to Connacht versus Bulls now. Just going to mention to Mohammed, if you've got an extra light, mate, please switch it on because you have gone very dark on the screen.
Unfortunately, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't.
Okay, maybe try changing the background because it's really just completely dominating everything. But anyway, Connacht Bulls. Caolan, we'll stick with yourself.
Mhm.
I'm going to give you the age-old question, the David from Scrum of the Earth question. Did the Bulls win it or did Connacht lose it?
I think the Bulls conspired to make themselves lose it and got away with it, if I'm being entirely honest. I was covering this game for work and I genuinely did not see a way the Bulls would lose this after about 20 minutes. They were on top. They looked so comfortable defensively. Like Connacht's second line break of this game was that Keelan Blade try in 45 minutes. Like they had a full half with one line break, and even at that it wasn't really one. And then the last 10 minutes, the Bulls just shit the bed. Like they just looked like they wanted to get out of there and get home when they had this game done and locked up. There is a big moment we have to talk about, and I don't want to take away from our headline on the Interpro show tomorrow, but there was a punch and there was a potential grab of the groin area by Jan-Hendrik Wessels on Josh Murphy, who then proceeded to punch him. We'll wait to see what the disciplinarians say about it. But like that at that point, it looked like Connacht were going to get beaten. The Bulls kicked on. Like de Klerk was fantastic. LaRue was excellent. Connacht's Lions in particular. I thought Mac Hansen played well as the game went on, but Aki and Beelum were just not really there. Like physically, were not up to the pace of it. And it looked like the Bulls were just going to soar to victory. 10 minutes to go. Sean Naughton comes on. Connacht get a kind of opportunistic try. Um, sorry, the second try, the last try is the more opportunistic one, the one from not, or yeah, second to last one from Naughton is very opportunistic. Kind of kick forward, Bolton kind of lucky at how it sits up, and they score from deep. But it's a weird, like the Bulls should have had this game done. And then it comes down to the last kick of the game. Naughton misses on the right hand touchline because Connacht, despite being under the post with a penalty advantage, did not look like pushing the Bulls over. So they went to it. They scored in the corner through Hansen. Naughton misses. Referee says retake. They went too early. Gets another chance. Misses again. It was such a weird game because Connacht just could not break down the Bulls for 68 minutes. I'm sorry, not even 68 minutes. They couldn't break them down for 75 minutes. And then they get a late scrum. Divine breaks around the side. That eventually leads to a dangerous tackle, which leads to them going kick to the corner and scoring that late try. Apart from that, they could not break down the Bulls because of their physicality and their defensive structure, but yet they still nearly won. And I said it on the Interpro show. I don't know where the Bulls are. I don't know if they know what they are at the moment. And this game looked like a very complete performance until it wasn't. And we have seen that from them before. You can't check out of these games. Not in a place like Galway. Not in Galway, not in Belfast like they did the week before, not in fucking Scotstoun where they go next week. You just can't do it. And they have. And that's a massive concern for the Bulls. Because you can talk about Jake White all you want, but it's the same players and they're doing similar things.
Oh, I've got to bring yourself on now, Space Mohammed. Um, that's from the South African point of view. Where are the Bulls under Johan Ackerman? Because the mentality is being called into question now, and people are saying things like these players got Jake pushed out the door. They've now got to perform. So what's your take on it?
I think it's early days. I think Ackerman didn't really have a proper preseason. They're not going to be rash and change things up too soon. But weird that the defense was actually quite good in spurts this game, which is interesting because the defense has been optional in previous
Well,
in
it
previous
still
games.
conceded 4 tries.
So yeah. Um, they could have conceded even more. I mean, to go away to Connacht and Galway, windy Galway, return of the Mac Hansen was there, but like Caolan says, him and Badiaki didn't really seem up to it. If I look through the Connacht team, that looks pretty much like their best team from my perspective, but obviously I don't have that much insight. I only know like the primary players and stuff. I do. Whenever I see Connacht, I have to think about that lady when we went to go watch the Stormers Connacht game at Cape Town Stadium last year, who said in Afrikaans, "Can someone please just tackle the redhead on the wing?" And much like the Stormers, the Bulls maybe not deserved winners, but they got the result away from home, and then they need to maybe regroup and rethink about like if we're serious about winning this tournament and or any EPCR tournament, we've got to play better than this. Bulls, if I look through their team sheet, pretty much pretty much got their good team. I'm not a big proponent of Andre Rudolph. He got exposed a bit last season. Last game. He's recently joined the Bulls from the Cheetahs. He looked like a guard in Currie Cup, but Currie Cup is a level lower. Still interesting to see JJ Theron now playing at blindside flank, and I'm glad Nabakaba got a chance. He looked immense at Currie Cup, and he captained the team at Currie Cup level. So yeah, Bulls, take what you can get and move on. And a lot to work on, especially defensive wise. But yeah.
You're on mute there, Hugh. Sorry.
No, I wasn't. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I think we do need to give Ackerman a good half a season before we start drawing conclusions. So a team that I'm not minded to give the same treatment is my Scarlets team. So obviously the Lions won this. So Mohammed, I'll let you speak first, being the South African voice talking about the winners, but then I'm going to have things to say about the Scarlets.
Yeah, so the Lions now won a game. That means the Sharks are the only South African team to not win a game, and Sharks are the one of three teams to not win a game, including the Scarlets. So Lions back and forth in this game, rode their luck a bit. Weirdly scored 2 tries while still in the second half, whilst being a man down. So that was interesting. They used more like the forward movement. I mean, they're really going for it. But I guess like Plumtree was definitely on the way out. Just depends on who we're going to replace him with. What's Eddie Jones doing these days? Oh yeah, he's with Japan. My bad. Cash van Rooyen, aka Ivan van Rooyen, staved off the mob that wants him out. So he actually got a win. Yeah, playing very much Lions rugby, like throwing the ball around. Very sparsely populated stadium, but they do have a massive stadium.
Welsh Rugby Twitter's had a field day with that this week. It's absolutely just I just can't do this argument anymore. So sorry, carry on.
About the fact that there were very few spectators at the Lions, or the fact that Scarlets were playing poorly?
Well, the fact that there were few spectators, they conveniently didn't mention the 50,000 plus fans in Dublin or the 11,000 fans down in Durban. But anyway, back to this game.
Yeah, so the Lions, weirdly, Leighton Warren came in replacement of under 20 star Ashimpede. That was interesting because Ashimpede's been on the bench. Shout out to Morne Brandon, a sort of unheralded player, came off the bench and scored 2 tries. Rolling Malls, Natiana Henko Venter had a slightly better game. I expected a bit more from the Scarlets. I mean, Alex Grove, South African-born English player, played for under 20. He debuted for the Scarlets on loan from the Stormers. Etienne Oosthuizen gave away his standard 2 unnecessary penalties. To be fair, his lock partner Darren Landsberg did the same. So yeah, Gio Lombard came on, played okay off the bench. Hey, JC Pretorius got denied a try, and then he almost scored a try later on, but then he passed the ball. A bit of a better performance from Henko Venter, Rowan Venter at blindside flank. I look forward to seeing him play for the Sharks soon. And yeah, a win, but still the Cash on Rowan's not out the dock just yet.
No, but if you talk about a coach under the pressure, the knives have come out for Dwayne Peel after this game amongst Scarlets fans. And what the thing is, Johnny, Johan Nicholas had an absolutely abysmal game. I'm just gonna say it. He had a really bad time in this game. Tackling with your arms, Johan. Like, we're watching a clip here on the screen. Like, just maybe he might not have got the ball away if you'd have used your arms. But we've seen, the thing is with the Scarlets, we've seen these exact players play a lot better than that. So the question is, why aren't you doing that anymore? Johnny Williams, who we've seen play very, very well for the Scarlets last season, I'm not sure he's done an out the back pass that has gone to anybody's hand all season. I thought that the back 3 were a disaster all game. Ellis Mee, I've said politely for a year now, you need to work on your game in the air. When you're that tall, there is an expectation that you will be good in the air. And you didn't win a single aerial duel, I don't think. Blair Murray, obviously that's going to be his weakness because he's not the tallest guy. But there were some aerial duels that were lost that were just embarrassing, that we should have gotten the better of and we didn't. And the lack of a clear plan of what we're trying to do on the pitch that we had last season, and we don't have it now this season. And the question is, why not? What's changed? What have we forgotten? This season was supposed to be about building on a young squad that did well last season. And now they've lost it all over the summer somehow. The same players have all forgotten what they did well last season. The same coaches as well. And we've seen this before under Dwayne Peel. Last season was pretty much the first season where they put together consistent performances all season. Normally, it's one half decent season, one half terrible season, and it's flip of a coin which half it is. So yeah, just tons of frustration. Henry Thomas, the questions over his fitness continue, given that he came on. RJ Holtz was doing a good job in the scrum. Henry Thomas came on, and it all fell apart. I did think, to be fair, that the two low knee locks, both on their Scarlets debut, have only been on the Scarlets books for a week. I thought they both did okay. I thought Jared Taylor, obviously another South African, had probably his best game in Scarlet's colours. I thought Marnus van der Merwe, another South African, played very well in this game. They both got turnovers for fun. I thought Archie Hughes got into everything in defence. I liked the way that he defended. I liked the way that he put himself about, and I thought that Sam Costello did what he could. But just massively disappointing from the Scarlets. Massively disappointing to be 0 points from 3 games. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. That's the thing about Scarlets fans, is we have expectations of how well our team is going to play, and being bottom of the league with 0 points from 3 games is not meeting our expectations. So
how do you feel about Joe Hawkins' return to Wales? Has he done well?
I think from what I've seen, the little I've seen so far, I think he looks a more natural fly half than Johan Lloyd did. I've seen people picking him in the Wales squad already. I'm like, boys, calm down. But so I think he's doing okay, and I can see the plan between having him and Costello on the pitch at the same time. It's when you've only got one or the other fit, that's when you're going to have real problems. And, the lock crisis is a crisis you could have easily seen coming. When you've only got 4 senior locks on your books, guess what? When 2 get injured, you've got an injury crisis. And you look at the injury records of some of the players, and you think, well, chances are that 2 of these are going to be injured at the same time. So yeah, but Joe Hawkins, I'm okay with what I'm seeing. I don't think it's his fault, anything that's happening, put it that way. So next game, moving on swiftly to Edinburgh versus Benetton. Question of which way we go with this one, lads, because 43-0 win with Edinburgh clearly played well, and some of their tries were very nice, but I feel like we've got to start with Benetton. You just, Caolan, don't know what you're going to get from this team.
You really don't. And it's a weird one, because you could look at it and be like, you know what? It wasn't full strength. And it wasn't. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
Still had Spagnolo, Isakor, Sneeman, Umanga, Mendy, Fekitoa, Rhino Smith. It was not a bad team. It was not a heavily rotated team. But I just get the concern now that maybe Benetton have regressed, because this is the type of beating we haven't seen them take in a long, long time.
well, they got 48 or 43-0 by the Ospreys away in Swansea last season as well.
Well, that's true. And I probably would have said the same thing last year afterwards, to be honest with you. But it's just concerning, because this kind of run of 2 good weeks and 1 bad week or so forth, you need to kick on. You need to kick on eventually. They have the talent. And I do fear that maybe their talent is just too much top line, and that their second layer isn't where it needs to be. Now, I could be wrong, could be proven wrong. Maybe it'll take time. They're under a new coaching staff. I understand all that. But you're missing 35 tackles in the game, for instance. You're kicking the ball half the amount your opposition does. When you're already going backwards and you're chasing the game, fair enough. They're just I watched this game back today, knowing it wouldn't be good, because I was covering the Connacht game, as I said, so I didn't see it live. It just wasn't good. Whereas Edinburgh, for me, and I know Ben would have always said Everett is confusing and he's annoying, and because he would just be so hot and cold. They have the power. They're starting to click out wide. Edinburgh looked like a playoff contender. Benetton this early in the season, I'm not sure you can say the same thing. And yes, they were in the playoffs, but I'm not sure you can say the same thing.
Yeah, I thought Bradbury, the number 8 for Edinburgh, looked very, very good in this game.
He's a very good player, yeah.
He was the standout for me. Obviously, both the big name wingers getting a score. I saw people talking about Darcy getting injured early in the game, but then he played on.
Yeah, I think Doohan ended up coming off, didn't he? Yeah, Doohan came off after 45 minutes in the end. But that, in fairness to both Edinburgh and to Benetton, back row depth are not better than Edinburgh and Glasgow. Back row depth is not an issue in Scottish rugby at the moment. Like Dylan Richardson and Magnus Bradbury both scored in this game, like Freddie Douglas on the bench. Obviously, that Glasgow back row is one of the best in the Euro C with Dempsey, with Dart, with Fagerson. And that is important too, because if Edinburgh get everyone on the field for a run of games, say the back end of the season, right? Because, okay, fair enough, they'll be Champions Cup. They will probably won't get out of that pool. It's already a pool of death as is. Like, you've got a powerful front five, you've got a very explosive back row, and you've got two of the best finishing winners in the country or in the league. So maybe this is the year they kick on. Maybe Everett will release the shackles just enough that they can play like this a little more often. And they played like this against Munster, but similarly to what we said there a while ago, about the Bulls, it just fell apart in the last 10 minutes because they had 4 yellow cards in that game. They were absolutely flagged at the end of it. When they're on the front foot, though, they're a very, very dangerous team.
Yeah, it's just two teams for me that you never know what you're going to get. They're the box of chocolates of the URC. A team that you do normally know, this is a very professional segue, a team that you do normally know what you're going to get when they turn up is Glasgow, your favourite team, Caolan. So a pretty comfortable 14-17 win against the Ospreys. I've seen some people talking about the Piardi in this game. Piardi divides opinion, but I don't think he made it 42-17. Having watched some of the highlights of this game, I watched most of the first half and then caught up with the second half on highlights. Some of Glasgow's scores were quite soft, but I don't know, Caolan, from a Glasgow point of view, they just seem to keep on doing what they're doing. It's admirable consistency from them.
It really is. Like given my allegiances, I'm not going to be Glasgow's number one fan just from it's Glasgow point of view. But I absolutely admire what they're building under Franco Smith. Like they have an incredibly deep squad. Like they've had a couple of injuries this week, and yet they still were just so powerful in this game. And it was one-way traffic the whole way through. And like as I mentioned, like the likes of Darge and Dempsey are so important to them, but neither of those featured in this game, for example. But you have the likes of, like that back line for me, and I just read it here just to refresh. As good as anywhere. Rowe, Tuipulotu, McDowell, Stain, Ollie Smith, like so sharp, so electric. I think Glasgow are probably the one team that we probably judge them a little bit too harshly at times because that rivalry at Edinburgh, it's still close enough. They're probably going to drop a game there every year. They do often lose in Benetton. There's no shame in that. But I think because Edinburgh and Benetton aren't consistent, we judge them off that. They never beat Leinster, so we judge them off that. Their record in South Africa can be up and down, so we judge them off that. Whereas with Munster, with Ulster, with, say, the Stormers, with the Bulls, we don't seem to hold them to as high of a standard. I think Glasgow are alongside Leinster, and obviously I hope Munster and Stormers get there based on how they started their season. The two most rounded teams in the competition, in the league. And yes, it was a big win down in Bridgend against an Osprey side that again seemed to flatter to deceive at times. But this is what Glasgow do when they're at their best. They typically start season strong anyway, but when they're at their best, they will just get on top of you. They will squeeze the life out of you. And like this game is another one that was basically done by halftime because that's what Glasgow do to you when they're at their best. And even though they rotated, and even though they weren't at full strength, and as in full strength is what we know their full strength team to be if the URC semi-final was tomorrow, they're still in a very, very good position. I may not be back for the rest of the season, but Glasgow are absolutely in my top four teams as of right now.
I think, yeah, I agree with you what you're saying about they're very well-rounded, very consistent. When you look at them on the pitch, all of them always seem to know what they're doing. You never see them looking around at each other going like, oh, what are you doing next? Where are you standing? Where am I standing? You see very few balls go to ground. It's just they're just organized. They're just damn organized, which I think speaks to the coaching from Franco Smith. Clearly done a fantastic job. A player who I really like is Jamie Dobie, a number 9. Now, I really like Horn, their other number 9, Antoine Horn, as we must call him. I'm a big fan of his. But Jamie Dobie, for me, is that he could be a little well, not even that little. He's quite big, actually. Superstar as a scrum half. You look at this, he's capable of playing on the wing, which is an expectation for scrum halves these days. He's got a rapid pass. He's a running threat. I'll see if I can find one of his tries. I just think he's got a bit of everything. I'd really like to see him get a few more opportunities with Scotland because I think he's got all the key ingredients.
He does, and he suits how Glasgow want to play as well. I do think if Glasgow had a weakness, typically you'd have looked at 9 and 10. Dobie and Horn could be hit and miss at times. Hastings the same. Lancaster, we don't know exactly where he is. Dobie's kicked on the last 2 years in particular. Horn is still in and around the level, but he's kicked on a little bit as well. The longer Franco Smith has been there.
Just to pick out this
Yeah,
pass,
you know.
like for this one, this is so flat to the Ospreys line. It just makes Tuipulotu's job, who obviously is a class player, so easy. I just think sorry, carry on, mate.
Yeah, but you're defending the not. I don't mean you. I mean for the Ospreys, you're defending the indefensible there because there's very few centres with the sleight of hands that Sione Tuipulotu has. So if you have him playing front football, flat to the line, what? Oh, I'm just going to tackle him. Yeah, well, he's going to offload. Oh, I'm just going to let him run over me. It's like, no, not that simple. But like when Glasgow get into this flow, there's very few teams better than them, and I do honestly think they're very close. I went back just to check their team sheet against Benetton. Like that, typically when you go to Benetton, you get a lot of low scoring games. I don't know why. That always seems it does happen quite a bit. It was strong, right? They will be frustrated, but they then kicked on and scored over 40 points in the last two games. Both over Welsh sides. They'd beaten the Sharks quite convincingly at home already. I think the only thing for Glasgow is if they focus on Europe this year, then I think they may struggle in URC a little bit more. But if they don't, I still think the cream will rise to the top, and I genuinely think they're one of those sides.
Yeah, and then from an Ospreys point of view, there's a lot of positivity around the Ospreys at the moment, and I just find it a bit odd because positivity is odd, full stop in Welsh rugby, regardless of what's going on. But there's a positivity about the team. Everyone was picking them to be the top Welsh region, and they hadn't changed the team that much from last season, so I wasn't sure where that was coming from. And then they've been brushed aside very easily by what we've said is a very good Glasgow team, but it was not a competitive game. And I don't know, maybe it's just the very how do I put this? Maybe it's just the very smart Ospreys PR team making sure that the sounds that come out of the Ospreys are all positive. Because I just don't know that everything is. I mean, they're clearly, obviously, I'm a Scarlets fan. Say on my Scarlets shirts, they're clearly better than the Scarlets at the moment. Clearly, the players are performing at a better level. Clearly, their pack is better. All these things. They're how they would do against Cardiff. The Ospreys have got a great record against Cardiff, so I'm not sure you can take that as a sign. But we're now in the position where you're kind of looking back at that win against Zebra, and you're like, Zebra made 12 changes and you didn't get a try bonus point. It's just, I just find it interesting, the kind of positive narrative around the Ospreys as a team at the moment when there's a question over how competitive are they actually. I think we need to see Jack Morgan come back in, who I think will make a massive difference. Owen Watkin is a big player for them as well. And we're yet to see Ryan Smith, their big signing from the Reds as well. So I'll be interested to see how he goes when he comes in. So that's all I got to say about that. We're on to our predictions now for round 5 of the URC. So I shall bring them up. First game of the week. Ooh, actually, this is quite a big game. I didn't realize that this was a first game of the week, but now I'm excited. It's Glasgow versus the Bulls. Based on what we've said, Mohammed, Glasgow got to be favourites for that.
Yeah, I'm picking Glasgow. If I had to choose, obviously I want the Bulls to win, but yeah, with their optional defense and Franco Smith's system, yeah, Glasgow all the way. Although I will say, Caolan, Glasgow do have depth, but they don't have as much depth as they had last season because of the whole Scottish system. Your friend over there that used to run Ireland.
For sure, that is for sure. But this is game of the week, surely. Like it is. I don't want to say if the Bulls lose, you kind of worry for their season because they'll have a lot of home games to come. But geez, they really need to get 2 points out of this, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, in any sort of away game, you're gonna have to like grind something out if you're not that favored. So you can pull off a victory, be fantastic, but yeah, at least come away with one, if not two, losing bonus points.
I think Glasgow are clear favourites. I think if the Bulls don't get anything from this game, I think that people have just got to calm down and just accept it that Glasgow are a good team and they'll have deserved it. Lions versus Ulster. Caolan, are Ulster favourites for an away win down in South Africa?
I think they have to be. I think the only concern is you look at the team that they had out last week, but you have to take out Ian Henderson, Stuart McCluskey, Jacob Stockdale, and Nick Timoney. That's a huge loss. That's a huge amount of losses for them. But you know what? I hope they do get the result down there. The Lions have been decent, but again, not the most impressive team in the competition so far. Joburg is a tough place to go, but I think on tomorrow night's podcast I'll probably be backing Ulster to win, so I may as well do it on this one as well.
Yeah, so am I. So am I, to be fair. Mohammed, Sharks versus Scarlets. Someone's O must go. Who's it going to be?
Hopefully we'll win. It's really a coin toss. I am wearing red for the Lions and Munster. I'm wearing my Foo Fighters t-shirt. So hopefully Sharks will actually put up a fight. Yeah, we're recording this on Monday because of the whole Amazon problem issue. That's what we're saying. But we still don't have team sheets, and for me, team sheets will shine a lot of light into what can be. Hey, if I'll say this much, if Jordan Hendricks plays, it starts, we'll have a better chance of winning the game.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think probably the Sharks because I haven't seen anything from the Scarlets tell me anything else. Leinster versus Zebra. Caolan, perfect opportunity to get back on the horse. You know, Geordie Barrett, man of the match incoming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely think Zebra will go to Dublin. No, they won't. I think a couple of people might talk themselves into a Zebra performance here. Yes, Leinster without about 25 odd players because of injuries and the Ireland squad, which is kind of ridiculous that Ireland are flying to Chicago tomorrow for a game 10 days after. But anyways, that's entirely different conversation. But Leinster should win. Probably going to see a few debutants. Apparently, Dan Sheehan's brother is involved training with Leinster this week. Bobby, Casper Gabriel, the young player, apparently he could get a debut as well. Josh Kenny already did a few weeks ago, so it'll be a fresh looking Leinster team. But Leo Cullen has kind of pointed the finger at the squad over the weekend with his comments, so I'd expect a reaction.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of those you can't win for Leinster because if they put 50 on them, people go, "Oh, it's Zebra."
Yeah.
So it's one of them. But I think the reality is Leinster fans will be watching it with these kind of like other players getting an opportunity and saying, "Oh, okay, so there will be learnings," is what I'm saying. Benetton versus the Stormers. Mohammed, imagine the Stormers go 5-5 to start the season. That would be very impressive.
I would love it. They're not losing any players to the Springbok team. We'll see who they can put out. Benetton blow hot and cold, even if they play their first team out in Italy. So yeah, I'm going Stormers by 3. Not super confident, but yeah, considering they started the season and riding their luck and like you said earlier, Dobson sort of rotating the team, but still getting results. Yeah, Stormers by 3.
Yep. Another Welsh derby, Dragons versus Ospreys. So Dragons have got a good record at home against the Ospreys. The only game they won against the Ospreys last season, sorry, the only game they won all of last season was against the Ospreys. However, I do think the Ospreys will have too much for them in this game. I don't see that record continuing just based on what I've seen. I think I've seen the Dragon just play decent stuff in fits and starts, but I do think that the Ospreys have just an overall quality advantage. They're just more settled. They've got a better, clearer identity. So I'm going for an Ospreys win. Munster Connacht, Caolan, another again a great opportunity for Munster to go 5-5.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great opportunity for Connacht to bounce back as well because, they've had two losses on the bounce that will really, really disappoint them. Again, similar to Leinster, Munster are going to be out a good few players. Brian Leeson and Edward Adogbo through injury, Jim Barron, Andrew Smith through injury, and then their Irish contingent as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised who wins this, but you have to go with Munster on form. Like the way Clayton McMillan has them playing, they look like a team whose floor has risen. And we've seen that against probably Scarlets in Edinburgh more so, that those games that they just, it just looked like it had improved. So I'll go with Munster. I'm hoping to be there for work, but we'll see. But this is not an open plea or anything like that, but we'll see. But I should be a cracking interval though.
JJ at 10.
Could be, yeah, probably will be JJ Hanrahan at 10. I've got rumours as well, like Leinster, that there could be a couple of debutants rolled out by Munster because they've this game, then they've a friendly against Argentina XV the following week. So they'll probably try and incorporate more young lads over the next 2 weeks. So that'll be interesting. But on the flip side, Connacht have kind of been feeling their way around the squad. They've used quite a few players as well. It's just gone under the radar with the losses. So it'll be interesting to see what team Stuart Lancaster rocks down to Galway with as well.
At what points do people start looking at Stuart Lancaster?
Not yet, but I do think people here in Ireland need to remember that his base game plan that he used at Leinster won't necessarily translate straight away because he had a bigger pack, he had a better back row. Leinster forced more errors off opposition, off that kick and transition than Connacht will be able to generate. So that's very important. But no, I do have faith in Lancaster. Like week one, Connacht looked really, really good. I just think they need to tweak certain things because they're not going to bully a lot of teams in this league like they did to Benetton.
Yeah. And then finally, Cardiff versus Edinburgh. I'm back in Cardiff. I think that's a great opportunity to make it 4 from 5. Edinburgh away from home. We know their away record is a big step down from their home record. Although Edinburgh, I think, did win the last time they went to Cardiff, with what was a disappointing Cardiff performance. But I'd like to see a Cardiff victory in this one, and I think they've got what it takes. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you to Caolan and Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Hugh.
Thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening to / watching the show. Subscribe if you've made it all the way to the end. Get involved in the comments. We know you always do. Enjoy the rugby, and I hope that everybody's team wins.
That was the United Rugby Rewind. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.